Hey guys, I've often wondered how credit cards really worked, so I decided to make this video to truly understand them. Starting at the beginning, the credit card was born from one of the most relatable moments in human history. Bro forgot his wallet. 1949, a guy named Frank is at a business dinner in New York City. The check comes, no wallet. His wife had to come rescue him. Of course, the natural thing to do, Frank decided to reinvent money. He came back to that same restaurant exactly 1 year later just to make a point, and paid with a small cardboard card, the world's first credit card. That card worked at 27 restaurants in New York City. That's it. That was the product. It was called the Diners Club card, made of cardboard, not plastic, and you had to pay the full balance at the end of the month. Imagine that. Frank's name was literally on the first one. The idea spread fast. Banks wanted in. In 1958, Bank of America mailed a plastic card, unsolicited, to over 2 million people in California. Nobody asked for it, it just showed up in their mailbox. They called it the Bank Americard. Bank Americard got big, really big, but the name only worked in America, so in 1976 they spun it off into its own independent company rebranded for the whole world. They called it Visa. Same card, new name. Early cards had a major problem. There was no fast way to verify anything. Every transaction was a phone call or paper imprint. Painfully slow. The fix came from an IBM engineer named Forrest Perry, and, more importantly, from his wife. Perry was trying to attach a strip of magnetic tape to a plastic card for CIA identity badges. He couldn't get it to stick without warping it. His wife happened to be ironing clothes. She suggested he use the iron. It worked! A household iron. The origin of credit card tech. The stripe itself is basically a tiny strip of cassette tape. Inside it are billions of microscopic iron particles. Each one acts as a miniature compass, pointing in one of two directions. It works basically like a barcode. When you swipe, the reader detects the pattern, like a needle reading the grooves on a vinyl record, and it sends your info to the bank. Fast and simple. And also completely flawed. The data never changes. Every swipe broadcasts the exact same information. So criminals figured out they could attach skimmers to ATMs and gas pumps. Capture your stripe, clone your card, use it anywhere. By the 2000s, card fraud was a multi-billion-dollar disaster. Something had to change. France saw this coming first. Chip cards debuted there in 1986. Europe was dealing with worse fraud than the US, and they moved faster because of it. The problem was every country built their own version of the chip, so they didn't speak the same language. So in 1993, Europay, Visa, and MasterCard joined forces to build one global standard, EMV, named after the three of them. Americans didn't widely get chip cards until around 2015, one of the last major countries to adopt them. More on the liability shift that changed this in a second. Here's what makes the chip fundamentally different. Instead of broadcasting the same card number every time, like the Stripe does, the chip generates a brand new one-time code for every single transaction, a unique encrypted cryptogram specific to that purchase. If a criminal somehow intercepted it, it's worthless. It'll never work again. Like a scratch-off lottery ticket, once it's scratched, it's done. So how does that work? The chip on your card has no battery. It's completely dead when sitting in your wallet. So how does it compute anything? Well, when you insert your card, the terminal does two things simultaneously. It sends electricity through the metal contacts to power the chip, and it sends a clock signal, basically a heartbeat that tells the chip how fast to run. Without the clock, the power alone does nothing. That wakes the chip up. Then the chip pulls in a few pieces of information: the transaction amount, a random number the terminal just generated, and an internal internal counter that the chip increments every single time it's used. It mixes all that together with a secret key, runs it through an encryption algorithm, and spits out an 8-byte code, your one-time cryptogram. Then it goes back to sleep. Now, here's the part that makes the whole thing work. That secret key didn't come from the factory. It was put there by the bank, specifically for your card, during a process called personalization, right before the card was mailed to you. Your bank kept a copy of the same key in its own secret vault. Nobody else has it. Not Visa, not the merchant, no one. So when the cryptogram leaves your card, it travels through the terminal to the merchant's bank onto the Visa or MasterCard network, and the network reads the first 6 digits, and that identifies the bank, and it routes the cryptogram directly there. Your bank reruns the same math on its end, and if the answers match, it's real, and if they don't, it's fraud. Every other bank in the world is completely blind to this exchange. They don't have your key. They don't need it. Each bank only ever verifies its own cards. The US was one of the last major economies to adopt chips, 29 years after France first deployed them. The reason? A combination of cost to upgrade infrastructure, and for a long time, banks just kept absorbing the fraud losses. It was cheaper to eat the fraud than force a national upgrade. The math changed in 2015. So this is where I was confused. I was thinking, if the chip is so much more secure, why do cards still have the magnetic stripe? Increasing the attack surface makes a card more secure. A chain is only strong as its weakest link, right? Which, it's a fair question, but the answer involves a brilliant and ruthless piece of economic engineering called the liability shift. In 2015, when the US pushed chip cards out, millions of businesses still had old swipe-only terminals. You can't upgrade every gas station and food truck overnight, so the card networks made a compromise. Keep the stripe for backwards compatibility, but completely change who pays when things go wrong. Here's the key part people get wrong. The liability shift has nothing to do with tracing where the card got stolen. No investigation. The rule is purely about where the fraudulent card gets used. Criminal skims your card in Ohio, walks into a shop in Florida with a fake card. That Florida shop is on the hook. Not because they did anything wrong, but they used the weaker technology. So this confused me. Can a merchant refuse to let you swipe? Because they all have the ability to swipe, of course. Sort of, but here's the clever part. The magnetic stripe on a chip card actually contains a hidden flag that tells the terminal, I have a chip, use it. So when you try to swipe a chip card, the modern reader detects that code and prompts you to insert instead. A merchant can ignore the prompt and let the swipe go through, but the moment they do and fraud happens, they own it. So for the long-term plan, the stripe is just quietly being retired. Starting in 2024, newly issued MasterCard cards are no longer required to have a stripe, and by 2033, no MasterCard will have one. Not banned, just allowed to die. Just when we figured out the chip, someone asked, what if you didn't even have to touch the reader? And the answer came from a bus system in South Korea. The world's first contactless payment launched in 1995 in South Korea, a transit card called U-Pass for bus commuters. Instead of fumbling with coins or swiping, you just tapped and kept moving. The idea was, make it so fast and frictionless that people stop even thinking of it as payment. Contactless credit cards came to the US in 2004, but the real tipping point was smartphones. Google Wallet launched in 2011. Apple Pay and Android Pay came in 2014 and 2015. And that's when Tap to Pay was truly mainstream. Then COVID pushed the adoption even further as people wanted to avoid touching shared services. Contactless payments in the US rose 150% between March 2019 and June 2020. Here's how the tap actually works. The payment terminal broadcasts a tiny, invisible electromagnetic field, like a bubble of energy, just in front of the reader. The moment you bring your card inside that bubble, the field induces a small electrical current in a thin antenna coil hidden inside your card. That current wakes the chip up. No battery, no contact. Think of it like a wireless charger on your phone. The 4 centimeter range isn't an accident, it's intentional. The signal is so short that you have to be right there, which makes it very hard for someone to silently intercept without you noticing. You have to mean it. So chip dipping and tapping are the same security technology. The chip generates the same one-time encrypted cryptogram either way. When you tap, the terminal's electromagnetic field powers the chip wirelessly. The same code, same encryption, the only difference is the wire. That's the whole story. Hope you found this informative. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers.